Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Near Future podcast with Tom and Jonny. I've been away for a couple of weeks. I'm excited to get back into podcasting. In fact, this is the first podcast we've done, just Tom and I, without a guest for a few weeks now, over a month maybe.
Yeah, so probably a month.
Yeah. So let's see if just Tom and I as a podcast holds up still, or whether everyone here is like, oh, we want someone more interesting on. Maybe we can. We've got some good topics. I think we've got something meaty to talk about. So we'll see where we get to. As always, if you have feedback on the podcast or want to suggest a topic or a guest, or you'd like to be a guest yourself, just email podcast@nearfuture.works. And we're really up for any feedback and ways to improve as we build this media empire. It's an empire-let, a mini empire, McEmpire. Don't know. Okay, let's move on.
I like it.
Over. Smooth, Jonny. Smooth.
Before we jump in, though, Jonny, we've got to touch on the fact that you do have internet now. This is a big step change that was not true a few hours ago. So if you're listening to this,
you guys have heard about the internet. It's pretty good. Backstory on this, and the reason why I haven't been, I wasn't around for Innie's podcast, the last episode, and actually we recorded a couple in advance so that we could release one every week. So you may not have noticed any of it, but I was moving house for the last, what feels like 15 years, but actually it was only the last couple of weeks. And then I went camping. So I had a very stressful house move, and then no internet on a campsite, and now no internet for the last week while we've been moving back in. And I got the internet about an hour ago, and it's like 500 meg, and I have so much internet, I don't know what to do with myself with all my internet. I might just start downloading torrents. I don't know. So yeah, I'm excited to be back. I haven't really read much of the internet over the last 2 or 3 weeks either. So I think there's a couple of things that I've noticed, but yeah, I feel like 2 weeks without being on top of AI news is basically a lifetime. So consider me in the Stone Ages. But yes, I'm excited to be back on here and continuing the pods.
Amazing. Well, it's great to have you back, Jonny. I'm excited for this conversation, and just managing to squeeze it in before the weekend, which is extra good. My few weeks have been fun, less camping and house moving, but it is the summer holidays here in London, in England, and so if you have kids of a certain age, then you're familiar with the fun adventure that is summer camp schedules and running around those and jumping back and forth. And I need to wrap up a bit early today to pick up a child from summer camp. But anyway, enough about life and admin and parenting. We're going to move on. So I thought it'd be fun to just kick off with checking in on how the podcast has been going. So as you said, Jonny, it's been a month since our last duo episode. Is that the right word for it? Just the one with just the two of us. And we've had a bunch of guests. We've had Avi from Deal, Domingo from Finn, Holly and Josh from Wise, and Inni from Ops. A bunch of really interesting conversations. Any thoughts or reflections you've had on those since?
Yeah, I mean, my first is a meta thought, which was we started off a podcast together and then we thought we should get some guests on. And now suddenly we have not only 4 guest interviews, but we've got loads more lined up. Really awesome people. Just so excited about them. And so it feels indulgent now to be doing one without guests, even though, over half of our released episodes are without guests. I think it's been fascinating, and it makes you realize how diverse the landscape is around attitudes to AI, progress through it, how people are seeing how it influences their teams, whether it's super senior IC folks versus like Josh and Holly at Wise who are leading hundreds of designers. Just all, you get a real sense of all of the different challenges. I'll start with the first one, Avi, and by the way, like, everyone should go back and listen to these because they're good interviews. But Avi at Deal, just the most sort of hardcore like builder, deciding not to just build things for himself, but then building for his team, and now deciding to build something that he hopes will take over from Jira. So he's taking on just small vibe coding projects, but just sort of the most, token burning AI pilled of all, maybe, and maybe reflective of Deal's culture and them being just absolutely hardcore leaning into AI across the business, and dropping Figma and all of that kind of stuff is just, I thought that was really fascinating and a good start for our guest appearances. How about you?
Yeah, totally. It's funny actually hearing you talk about that was making me think about the one theme that I think has been true across all guests is not just a willingness, but an excitedness to lean in and get your hands on the tools and make things and try things out, almost without necessarily needing for it to be the new Jira in your company, but just starting from a place of, oh, we can just make things now. We can just do things, like let's try and see what happens. And that seems to have been a common thread in all of those conversations, even though it's taken maybe a different form for a person who is maybe primarily a people manager or primarily hands-on day-to-day as an individual contributor. Does change the shape a bit, but there is this fundamental, like, you need to get your hands on and be trying to make things, or not just trying to make things, making things in this new world, to just get a real feel for what's possible and how it could impact your day or your work.
Yeah, even our leaders like Holly and Josh and Avi are building and they're going home and building, and it just you have to get your hands on this technology and this everything about what's happening to the industry to really feel confident that you know how to navigate others through it as well as yourself.
Yeah.
And the leverage that you get from knowing a little bit more, being a little bit more leveled up yourself, in terms of whether it's actually just so you can hire people that are more appropriate or for your culture, or more AI pilled or something like that.
Definitely. I do think there's a couple of quotes specifically that I've been reflecting on. One is the one that Josh said about, I don't hire managers or general managers. I only hire managers who are close to the tools, and design is a practice. You need to be hands-on. And then Domingo, in the conversation with Domingo, I think it was actually you that said this, but it sort of resonated for the conversation, which is that taste is earned through getting the reps in, and you can't use AI to take a shortcut with that. And I think those two things together feel like a good temperature check on all of these conversations, where it sort of doesn't matter if you're established as a people leader inside big organizations that are working through this stuff. You need to make space and make time to actually get hands on, actually make things, and remember that this is a practice that you learn through doing, not just through talking or pontificating or imagining, because all of these things are being reimagined right now live. And so, yeah, getting your hands on as part of that, regardless of what your role is a really important theme right now.
Yeah, I think there's something counterintuitive about the promise of AI being able to do a bunch of the design for us, or raise the floor. I think Josh said design raises the floor, doesn't raise the ceiling. I think that's something that we've always said as well in client work and stuff like that. But there's something counterintuitive. Like, I might have said 2 years ago, as AI comes for design, great, this is going to mean I can do better design work while having spent less time learning how to do design work. And for us, as we've spent the last 5-10 years doing some design, but actually not necessarily spending all of our time in the tools, great, now we don't have to worry about relearning. I now couldn't. I think the opposite, actually. I think there isn't. AI gives you no shortcut at all. I think it gives you a shortcut if you're not a designer to put something together that's passable and that looks convincing. I think if you're actually a designer, the Overton window has moved so quickly from, if 2 years ago I'd put together like a cool landing page with loads of shaders and lots of animation, stuff like that, people would be like, oh, I can't believe you did that yourself. You're a double threat, etc., etc. And now, I mean, anyone can do that within reason. Anyone can throw more effects, can throw more cool stuff, cool technology at their design work. And so therefore that is ordinary now. And actually the taste becomes about removal and becomes about having an opinion, and that hasn't gone anywhere. And it turns out that AI design is the opposite of cooked. I think, and I've come to this myself also designing things over the last 6 months and looking at them and being like, that's not better because I used AI to do it. In fact, I feel like I have to spend just as long getting to something that is better than average. Average has moved, but better than average. So yeah, I think a lot of what Josh was saying, especially, is it really resonates with my personal experience of designing in the year of our Lord 2026, and realizing that there's no shortcut really. Like Claude Design can put together a sort of convincing mid-level design system, or you can put together a mood board in the OpenAI image models. But now anyone can do that. It has to be better than that by definition. So anyway, I just disappeared into a rant, but
no, that a lot of what you're saying resonates with me as well, and it reminds me of this post I saw going around the internet, which I have not shared with you, but maybe you saw it, about something on Hacker News that was about, if I see an AI generated image at the top of your blog post, I'll change the tab, or I'll close the tab, or I'm not going to read it. But I think it maybe speaks to a similar theme of like the level of what is average design is reaching a point where we're becoming accustomed to it, or attuned to like this aesthetic quality of it, which is almost repulsive in a way. Repulsive is an extreme word, but it does carry this effect of like, I think, carrying a lot of the baggage of, you must not have thought about the words in your piece if you're using an AI generated image to summarize it, which I think is maybe a little bit, logically, that doesn't sit right with me. Like, it feels a bit over the top to discount the written content of a post because of an image, but I totally understand why that feeling exists. And I think it would be fair to say that I've experienced that as well, of just getting to a page and being like, is it really worth my time to read this based on this image?
It starts with like a level of sort of disrespect for the reader almost, that you're like, I'm not gonna, even though a lot of people that write very well probably can't image make themselves. They don't have that skill, so it would make complete sense for them to use an AI generated image. So it's not necessarily a reflection of the words, but straight away it's like, I don't know, is it all going to be like this? Like, if you haven't bothered to write it, should I bother to read it? Yeah, all of that kind of thing. I haven't read this article, by the way, but sort of filling in the blanks, but
yeah, and I think it was actually written a couple of years ago, so this was maybe sort of at an earlier era of AI generated imagery. But yeah, I do find that kind of fascinating, and like, because I completely agree with you, and I remember us having a conversation maybe a year or so ago about exactly this, where if you don't have the time or capability to make image assets for a post to accompany your thing that your newsletter or whatever it is that you're putting out there, how could you augment that with some established design direction or art direction that you could have consistent between your posts every week, and it would look decent and wouldn't take you forever to produce, but you don't need to commission an illustrator for your blog that has 10 readers. And I feel like we've maybe come full circle of, like, a year ago or 2 years ago, that was a cool possibility that AI introduced, and now it's like actually doing more harm to do that than having nothing at all. And yeah, all the advantages that social media would train us into having images to accompany posts that we're sharing on social networks is maybe reverting to like actually having no image at all, having a blank or just a very, very scrappy sketch that is very clearly human, is doing more to create a sense of authenticity and real value than this polished image that previously would have done a lot of the work of communicating the premium feel of the article.
Yeah, I wonder if I think it's not just AI generated. It's like you couldn't move it enough away from the like mean image that is created by AI. You couldn't even art direct it enough to try and make it not look like AI. because actually
Right.
AI can create images that looks not like AI. They're like, it
Yeah.
could create a sketchy looking thing that looks like it was made by you, or it could create something that was like photographic and looked like it was shot on a fancy camera with a gnarly film or whatever. Like you could take it there, but
Yeah.
if you've just typed in like man sitting on a chair into ChatGPT and then taken that and not really sort of thought whether that was okay or not, a bit like, I think we probably talked on this podcast before about not feeling that comfortable getting AI to write for you, but these models are really good as editors and rubber ducks to just sort of feedback. Like, does this make sense? Like, is there something? Does it flow? Am I missing? Could this point be stronger? That's really valuable as a critic. But if you're just like, can you write me a blog post about SEO, and then just don't read it and just put it out, then obviously that's bad. Or even your agent just publishes it without telling you and puts your name under it.
Yeah, totally. It's fascinating. And Substack recently released an AI detector feature. I don't know if you saw that, Jonny. I think you can go onto any post and ask, was this created by AI? And it does some kind of detection around that. I haven't tried it out yet. I don't know how it works, but kind of fascinating that we're sort of getting into this world of like what was fresh and new a year or two ago is now already so old that it's slowing everything down. But ultimately, I think the point you're making there is right, of less about using that technology on its own and more about how are you pushing or reaching new levels of what's possible through using it well rather than just using it.
Yeah. A good artist has the same paints as a bad artist, but the good artist knows how to use them better. Maybe that's a bad analogy. I don't know. There was actually, this does remind me of a tool that I saw. In fact, one of my old investors, Sarah, has invested in a company called Ellipsis, which is like a writing tool, but it's very anti-AI. Like it's like a writing thing that for writers that is proudly, there's no AI in it, and they've been trying to work on a problem, which is how do you prove that this wasn't AI written? And they've released something, I think this week. I saw it just this morning, where you can demonstrate proof of work. So you can show this piece of writing, and then you can say how long it was taken to write, how many words you can see all the edit history and things like that. So, and that would be and it's, I don't know if it's on the blockchain, but it's in some way sort of immutable. So that I can show you I've written this piece and it was written by me and there was no AI used, and I have proof of that. And that might be quite niche in a way, that the sort of need for that, maybe in academic writing or something like that, would be really valuable. But it's interesting that people are working on this problem, and I do think that there is. If I know something has been created by hand, I absolutely value it more. I would, and I think that feeling will only increase in me and increase in the world generally as we see more and more slop. And actually, LinkedIn now has this is an AI slop button. You can report a post as AI slop. I think a couple of the other social platforms have done that as well. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see this kind of thing evolve. Sort of reaction against the worst bits of this technology.
Fascinating. Slight tangent, but just to close the loop on our podcast guests. Hearing you talk about that reminds me a little bit of our conversation, or my conversation with Inni at Opus, who built this wireless radio in the browser. And a part of that conversation was around how long she spent getting the sound of rain right for this specific kind of Nigerian tin roof that was a very different rain sound than you hear in the West. And the level of detail that she went into there was incredibly impressive for a part of the experience that I imagine many people going to that site would not necessarily have found themselves tuned to the right radio station while in the rain mode on the tin roof. But yeah, there is that level of, if you can like push your sort of detail oriented attention to detail into all these different directions and angles. Like, what kind of interesting craft question does that open up? And I thought that was a really fascinating one, which feels like it's quite far away from image generation and writing, but there is maybe a quality of, once you have something that you're happy with and you've built, how do you use AI to push at the edges to really exaggerate some of the details of that image or that piece of text or that project, to really bring it to life in a way that does feel human, but obviously requires AI to produce it and get to that level in the first place.
Yeah, I think Innie's, that project is a perfect example of this new technology used as a tool to build something that Innie couldn't have built, or would have taken her a very long time to build without it. But it doesn't at all take away from the concept and the impact that the project has in itself. And so therefore, I mean, it's the opposite of Slop, I would say. I think it's like a perfect use case for, I'm going to leverage this technology to create something that I can imagine but I wouldn't have been able to create otherwise, and doesn't feel derivative in any way. It feels like something that is very personal to her, and yeah, so long may stuff like that continue. And I think we're going to talk about another of those a bit later, another project like that.
I think we should just jump in now.
Yeah, let's move on to it, shall we?
Yeah. So tell us. So we've been observing, seeing backyard designers break out on the internet. Backyarddesigners.club is a design community online. Actually, how would you describe this? It's like an online sticker album of design influencers.
I think it's like fantasy football. For those people that know what fantasy football is, it sort of feels like that. You like pick your team of designers, and then I don't think there's any way to pit your team against another team, but you have a budget of X Twitter followers to use, and each designer has a following, and you can spend, Innie's on there, I think, actually. You can spend your budget however you want, and you put together a roster of 7 designers, and then you can sort of share that as like a social sharing thing. But the website itself is so completely delightful as another example of designers who previously wouldn't have been able to justify creating anything that looked like this, being able to enhance and create this like extraordinary, like game-like rich experience on a website. So when we talking about this, there's kind of 2 bits of it that I think we planned on covering, and one is just the craft of the actual experience of the website itself, and the other is the hoo-ha, to use maybe quite a British phrase, the sort of explosion of opinion and positive and negative sentiment around it afterwards, because this is a curated site where the 2 creators, Tommy and Rid, who are very, very well-known designers in their own right on Twitter, I'm not going to call it X, they have sort of pulled from their network, and typically, and the currency is Twitter followers, which in itself is interesting. You know, the implication being like, the more Twitter followers you have, the better a designer you are, is implied by the mechanic on this website. So yeah, like let's start with the first one, the craft, and let's not screen share it, I suppose, because like people can go to it. People should just go to it and play with it rather than watching us. But you should go and play with it. If you're watching us, open it in another tab, backyarddesigners.club, and then another chap created Broadcast Designers as a reaction to it that we'll get to, but it's sort of similar experience. Tom, like what? Just interested in your thoughts on the sort of craft and playfulness of it.
I think it's super. I think you covered it well, but yeah, very delightful visual polish, visual detail. I actually like the sound design throughout all of it. There's this sort of game-like quality to it, and it's very sort of light and bouncy, and you feel like it feels like Pokemon or something. Not that I have actually played Pokemon, confession, but it feels fun and engaging.
You call yourself a millennial and you never played Pokemon.
Yeah, outed myself. Yeah, it's just a really fun thing. I think there's something about the aesthetic quality as well of the characters in it as well that feels very fun and playful and also expressive, but in a way that doesn't feel like AI slop by any means. And yeah, I think there's a lot of really nice animation, motion, visual design, sound design, uh, a lot of really nice playful qualities to the quality of the experience. And even in the commentary version, the broadcast designers, which super fun. I think there's a lot of similar qualities to how that was executed as well. So for in terms of experience quality, great work all round. But I think it does. Sorry.
No, you go. You go.
But I think it does raise some interesting questions about the sort of community aspect, or the hoo-ha as you call it, Jonny. Do you want to move on to that yet, or I think you were maybe going to say something else?
One thing that I was pondering was the speed with which this clone basically came to be, and the original idea was truly an original thought. I don't know if it was Rid or Tommy or both of them that sort of put this together, and the aesthetic and the like art direction of it all, and making it feel like a sort of like, I can't remember the genre of video game, but like a cute sort of fun casual game that you can play. It really feels very game like. That was a truly original piece of design work. And then presumably, I don't know if the code is open source or something like that, but you could then just this other guy just pointed his AI at it and said, make another one, but make it really dystopian and make everyone look sad. And probably didn't need too much more. I mean, I'm sure there was more work to it than that, but once the original thought has been had, how quickly it can be sort of cloned, and someone can create a satirical or a commentary version of it. So like, it's back to like, where is the designer's unique ability in all of this? I think that was a great original piece of design that happened, that then as soon as it was put out there became everyone's, and the moat, or the like defensibility of that idea, was very, very low, it turns out, at least technically. So yeah, it's hard. The pressure to have an original thought, I think, is like very high at the moment, because everything sort of looks the same, or like people just jump on these trends, these design trends, quite quickly. So to try and find something that an AI couldn't do, basically, or wouldn't have thought of, yeah, I suppose that was my last thought on the visuals of it. I think it's really cool. Yeah, sound design. People forget about sound design. I think it's really good. And the sort of gamification of it, and they're iterating on it and bringing in feedback and adding more like Easter eggs and stuff like that. So yeah, cool project.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah. Well, actually, before we go on to the however,
yeah.
I think your point there is also kind of interesting on the role of design as author of the original concept versus design feedback and influence in shaping and evolving it. Because I think the nature of this as an experience is obviously rooted in design community. It features a lot of internet famous designers. So if the material you're working with is inherently shared amongst other people, and then there's a lot of people who have opinions about that, the authorship of how that iterates and evolves, I don't know, an interesting question of, is that still the work of one individual who's creating it, or is that then the sort of collective work of a community of people who are all invested in this craft and this space? I don't know. Interesting thought. Anyway,
It's interesting.
hoo-ha. Hoo-ha. Tell us about hoo-ha, Jonny.
Well, I think that the only reason probably that we know about this project is because of the hoo-ha. Whenever you put anything out that puts some people above other people, there are winners and losers. And the implication of this, and the fact that you can't just add yourself to it, and you have to ask, some people would say beg, one of the creators to add you. I think at least reading Twitter and LinkedIn and things led a lot of people to feel like it was exclusionary and exclusive, and didn't feel good about not being on it, and I can understand that. I think but there are many situations in which there's an in crowd and an out crowd, and it's fine to have exclusive clubs and lists. And if you're building a SaaS company and you want to be in the top 10 ways to send an email in 2026, and if you're not, then that's sad, and work harder and maybe you get there, or pay the right person who writes the list and then you get there. These things exist. For me, I was like, I'm not on it. I don't think I wouldn't expect to be. I think it's fine for people to create a list of their friends that are good at design, and even gamify it, and like create sort of a way for people to interact with it and compare their lists and things. I think where it gets a little more difficult is when you then claim that that's a community. I have an example of a website that I've built that sort of, I mean, you can't pick your own things, but it's got a list. There's foundupnorth.com, which is a list of founders in the north of the UK. And there is a community behind it because there's meetups and events and like a WhatsApp community where people talk to each other and stuff like that. And the list is just a list of the people in the community. This is basically just a list of people. I would define a community as like bringing people together to share a conversation, to help each other out and things like that. So is it a community? I would argue probably no, unless there is something else happening behind the scenes that is bringing that group of people together, in which case fine. Like you're allowed to have a closed door, a closed room, a group of people that are excellent at what they do and are joined by the fact that they're both designers and well known. And how do you manage that? And how do you build each other up and protect each other and stuff like that? That's really feels very valuable. So I think that was basically the heart of it. And so then this broadcast designers one, you can sign up to and create your own avatar and be on there. And that was a cool reaction to it. But that was my read of it anyway. I think something that is an interesting project and an interesting technical project and something that gets a lot of reaction on the internet, great. If you're then claiming that you're doing it because for the community, I find that less convincing. Over to you.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That take makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it is a slight sidestep from that, but I found it really interesting. I played with it a little bit, so this is not an exhaustive reflection, but I was kind of interested by just how many designers on there were working or are working at Vercel or big software companies, which just I think is just interesting. The state of design is evaluated through this lens of the most successful software and tech companies, and maybe that is the right way to evaluate design today or sort of product design today. But I just found that quite an interesting lens. There was fewer, I don't know, Debbie Millman's. I don't know if she was even on there. She might be on there, but there was fewer people who sort of transcended specific silos of design and spent a lot of time in these broader or varied flavors of design roles. And it was very much people who were very deep in tech. And that's not a critique of people deep in tech, but more just if you're trying to summarize a community of people in a discipline, it's interesting that discipline is constrained to this one corner of a craft.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's broadly a reflection of the designers that are extremely online on Twitter. And a lot of those, I would imagine, are work for companies where it's encouraged that they see it as a real value, a piece of value to have their staff extolling the virtues of the business and being famous in their own right. It's a talent magnet, all of that kind of stuff, and great free marketing for the business. So, there are a lot of businesses that can't or don't want to or haven't thought to do that, and it's cyclical in the sense that if I want to be big on the internet, or like that is a big part of my persona, a big part of what I want to do is be well known, then I'll join a company where that's supported, and that's cool, because working for a cool company accelerates my own reach. That sounds like cynical, but I think it's actually okay to want to be, we're running a podcast. We hope more people listen over time. There'll be non-financial benefits to us of running this, which is, network and meeting interesting people, and et cetera, et cetera. So, we're not exactly not in that group, or hoping to be in that group, but I almost feel like if it's if it's anything, it's defined by this subset of design engineering type people working for really forward-thinking US tech companies that are growing like weeds, and have been thinking about developer advocacy and things for a very long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's very true. It's kind of interesting. It makes me think of the world of, I don't know, I feel like there was a while we went through where companies didn't want people to be as public, because then they would be more likely to be poached by other companies. And I don't know if there's a sea change around that now, or it's shifted, or if it's the same as it's always has been. And if you have a big audience at one of these companies, then you are likely the target to be poached. It works both ways.
yeah, or maybe they're just like, what, they'll leave if they want to anyway, so we might as well just get them talking about us for as long as we have them. I don't know.
Well,
I think also I also wonder if you're known as the guy that works at that company. I think there's quite a few of the people I'm thinking of where you're quite kind of tied to the business, and like might be quite
right,
sticky to, I want to stay there because they support me, and what if the next thing isn't, they're not as
that's true.
supportive. Sort of golden handcuffs of like, we have a symbiotic relationship, me and my workplace, where
Yeah.
they let me in work time tweet a lot or something.
Yeah, totally. Cool. I think this, just moving on a little bit from this, I think there is kind of an interesting question that this ties to or connects into, is the idea that design output, design craft, is the most visible, tangible, obvious example of your contribution as a designer. But I think that is much less legible or visible for anyone who is in a leadership role, people management role, operations role, or potentially just a design role that is less publicly visible in the nature of your work. And I don't know what to really make of this, but I've been thinking about this theme recently, and recently listened to the podcast interview with Noam Siegel, who spoke to who led or ran the AI in design, or AI in product survey, I guess it was, annual survey. And in this episode, he shares back a bunch of his research insights and themes, synthesizing across the survey respondents. And I think there's definitely a very strong theme coming through, that from him, that it's people who are the ones who are both excited, exhausted, hopeful, and scared, often at the same time. And I think if you're able to channel that energy into making something visible that proves your value to the world or to a company, I would like to think that that's probably you have a bit more agency in this world. But I think if your value is less legible, I guess it raises the question of, are you still able to add or communicate the same value in the same way? Is this just a phase we're going through, and then after that visibility and legibility wears off a little bit, the structures or systems or surroundings that enable that will become more important? Or will they never be more important, and actually the only thing that is important right now is having an output that is directly visible and clearly ties to the bottom line of a business, very directly? I don't know, but I think there's definitely these interesting themes in that sort of the edges around the craft that I think are interesting questions.
Do you think that this is just a continuation of, I feel like it's always been true that if you end up being a designer at a company where the product looks shit. Like, the UI is old, it's some ratty old, legacy system that you're working on, and it's really important and it's used by millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people, and very important people, but it's not going to be a priority to make it look cool anytime soon. And the most important work is elsewhere, and you're stuck with it. And so therefore, your portfolio from a visual point of view is underwhelming, even though the work you're doing is good. And that's where you end up with people with like portfolios full of people pointing at post-it notes, maybe. Or, I mean, there's a lot of that in other bad portfolios, but you get stuck in a situation where like your work doesn't stand for itself and you have to explain it so much that it's just different kind of work. I feel like leadership work is probably similar in that you're like, well, my team did this, and look at all these beautiful things that I didn't actually design myself. I just, helped everyone to do it, and we moved these metrics. But that's, you can make the numbers really big in your portfolio, but it's not like a beautiful, beautiful UI. So you sort of get stuck in that trap as well. And I feel like that's always been sort of true.
Yeah.
But you also found this really good LinkedIn post from Gergely, the pragmatic engineer, with engineering leadership trends. Please dig into it, because like you found this and I read it and was like, oh, this is true of design as well. But yeah, give us the TLDR.
Yeah, we will share this in the show notes. But Gergely talked about, I'll read a few quotes, but the general gist is he's been speaking with engineering leaders, like CTOs, heads of engineering at lots of startups and mid-sized companies. And a lot of them are burning out or leaving or just struggling in their roles. And he wrote this post which summarizes a few of the reasons. And I think there were 3 in there that I think were really particularly interesting. I'm just going to read out verbatim what he put in his post. So here are the few reasons. Number 1, realizing the role that they were hired into is just a shit one to do right now, thanks to AI, often unrealistic expectations. Number 2, realize the company they joined doesn't have a future strategy to come out winning with AI. And number 3, realize that they will not get the AI native experience they know they need to get to thrive long term, and the setup won't allow them to get it. So it will be career suicide. And so I think there's almost this squeeze coming from top-down pressure to do more faster with less at higher quality. But then there's this sort of industry, and I think that's the reason why it's a really difficult role right now. But then I think there is this sort of macro business context of some businesses are just much better set up to succeed in this current moment than others. Not to mention the challenges that come with AI transformation. So even if you can move your whole organization forward to this AI native future, what does that mean for the viability of your business or the business that you're in? And I think that does raise a lot of new questions that weren't even there before. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating post and something I've been sort of thinking myself from conversations I've been having with various design leaders over the last year or two since going independent and speaking with various people in various companies. And seeing Gergely's post felt like, oh yeah, like this has been, I'm surprised almost that this is new, because I feel like this has been the case for the last year or two. I'm less attached to engineering leadership, but I feel like that trend's been happening in design. But maybe it hasn't. Maybe I'm just seeing the wave coming on the horizon and it's not actually here yet. But I'm curious what your take is, Jonny, because I think when I shared this with you yesterday, you mentioned how maybe this is a more Silicon Valley trend that is starting now and will catch up to design a year or two from now. But Is the trend already here? Are people already experiencing this, or is it to come? What's your thought?
I do think engineering teams were put under this pressure a year ago. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, almost a year ago. It was, when was it, Opus 4 came out or something, sort of towards the end of summer, And then just before Christmas 2025, when the coding models got really good, it's just ratcheted up the pressure on the engineering org to get AI pilled, or the engineering community. And I suppose in that situation, like if you're an engineering leader and you're stuck in an organization that doesn't believe in that, then it can feel, I would imagine, really stressful to feel like you're falling behind through no fault of your own, but just because you're not given the opportunities to upskill in this way. And meanwhile, all of these other people on the internet are racing ahead and running agent fleets and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that design then had the start of that moment, sort of maybe Claude design, actually, like February time. And suddenly everyone going, well, are you even a designer if you're not, designing with AI constantly? And again, if you're in a design organization where you're drawing rectangles in Figma or whatever it is that you're doing, and you're looking over at the people that are running at it with their agents, again, like the longer I stay here, the further behind I fall back. I can imagine being a feeling. Then there'll probably be those people that are like the like Block has gone all in, and a bunch of people are like, nope, I don't want to do this at all. I want to work for a more normal company that has a more level head about this, and might still lean in, but over the course of a couple of years rather than big bang, or may actually have a culture which is no AI at all, which I think increasingly will be difficult. But yeah, but it seems like it's sort of split. It does feel like it sort of split people and companies in these sort of two directions, potentially. I don't know, this is a very tortured analogy, but Brexit. I'm just going to relate it to Brexit, because the Brexit vote sort of cut through party lines effectively. There were, people that would call themselves on the left and call themselves on the right that voted for and against Brexit, against their normal voting habit. And I do wonder if, like, this extraordinary technology coming in from the left field suddenly divides engineering cultures and now design cultures, and probably cultures in lots of other parts of a business. Are you for or against this thing? Feels very binary. Either you want to give over to the agent overlords tomorrow, or you never want to do it at all. And the thrash that comes out of that, if you're a leader and trying to work out how to navigate all of this and work out what the right answer is going to be. And this article says, they're quitting. They're basically just like, they're leaving and taking breaks from work because it seems like the only thing to do now, because you don't want to stay where you are, and it's hard to get a job in a real AI pilled company without much evidence that you can do that, because your previous company didn't allow you to. So therefore, what do? And you end up sort of stuck in the middle. So yeah, I think in a way, we're like doing something in betweeny. We're working with companies that are trying to work this out and seeing it in other people. I think we've seen it in with clients that we've worked with. But I can also definitely feel it myself. Like, what's the right answer here? Do I go all in and go and work for an AI pill company? Yeah, so I think leadership is in a hard place, probably.
Yeah, and I feel like, just to build slightly on what you just said there, I think I have spoken with, and I can imagine this being true, of leaders who are very excited about what AI makes possible and are totally bought into setting their organizations up around AI in the near future, or working toward that. But I think that doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth transition to get there. There's going to be a lot of, and not just about the transformation aspect of it, but the culture change, the sort of people and hiring process, the operational and logistical workflows. There's like so many pieces to figure out as a leader, that I think there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. So I almost feel like it's distinct from whether you personally are interested or not interested in AI, but more about how does this company succeed a year from now based on what my function is capable of doing within this organization to make sure it is set up to be successful. And that is a lot of conditionals that will orient around an outcome, and that outcome might even be questionable based on the business you're in and what how capable it is as a standalone business, viable business. I feel like Finn and Intercom is probably the success story of this working. But I imagine when they were starting down the road of making those investments in AI and shifting the culture around that, I imagine there were some early days where there was a lot of existential questions of like, is this really, like, we're making some radical investments, is this really going to pay off? And clearly it is for them, at least from the outside. It seems like it's paying off very well for them, but that's requires a very strong leadership vision of what the future looks like and really committing to that. And I feel like a lot of companies, I could imagine, not having the guts to go through with that.
For sure. Yeah. Or not wanting the short-term pain.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's incredibly decisive what Intercom did. And I think in a vertical that was a really obvious AI disruptor vertical. So, but kudos, amazing that they did it and did it so early. And there are companies even now that won't do that. And probably lots of companies where it's not the right decision as well. But
yeah.
In the meantime, if you're in one of these organizations and you get the exciting news, all hands invite, oh, what's this going to be? I can imagine the fear of what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, definitely. Or the infamous Slack message, do you have a minute?
Yeah.
We will see.
Never send one of those, people. Send one of those.
Yeah. Anyway, 55 minutes. We've been recording for a while. Should we wrap this up, Jonny? We have a few lighter notes to finish with around our AI experiments. I think we've shared a lot about what we've been reflecting on recently, even for a time where we have been fairly disconnected from the news cycle, which feels good. I'm surprised you had as much to talk about as we did, actually, but very good. So a couple of things I've been AI experimenting with recently. So I've been building some agent skills, and I posted about that this week. So we're preparing to run our build workshop, which is next Thursday. There's still a few spots left. So if you're listening to this and interested in coming along and building your own design tool, please do that, nearfuture.work/build. But part of that, as part of that process, we are sending out a Claude or an agent skill pack, which is initially focused on Claude. And it basically helps distill, or it has distilled, a workshop process that Jonny and I went through 18 months ago now when we were first starting to run AI Builder Hack Weeks. And it helped people reflect on how they work, where they get their energy, what's draining for them, and then identify opportunities for ways AI can help them in their work, and then generate a bunch of ideas. And we've basically adapted that into something that you talk through with AI, what your week looks like, what you enjoy spending time doing, and then it helps generate a list of potential tools, design tools you could build in half a day. And the goal of that is really just to give people a jumping off point to join the workshop next week with a starting point with a list of tools they could build. It's quite handy actually as well that the skill is set up to scope technical ideas down to what is feasible within that time. So it will sort of put some warning signs up if you're getting too ambitious with the technical scope or thing that you might be imagining. But hopefully that can also help people push toward more ambitious ideas, and maybe even if you're not super comfortable with building with AI yet, it can help have some more like here's a MVP version of what you're thinking about, and here's the stretch goal if you have the time for it. So I've been building that. That's fun. And then the other thing I've been building this week was a 3D chess game for my 5-year-old son, who has no interest or awareness of chess at all. But I think chess, I played chess when I was a kid, and I feel like there was something very rational and logical about it. And I think my 5-year-old has a similar brain, but there's quite a learning journey and quite a steep learning journey in learning how to play. So I thought I would play around with these use Opus 5 I didn't use Fable for this. Maybe I should have. Of using Three.js to build like this 3D world that your thing can exist in. I think Andre Kapathi posted something he built recently about feeding in the first paragraph of Lord of the Rings, and it built a world around that. So it's a similar concept to that, but applied to building a 3D chess game for people who are figuring it out for the first time. And it was super fun. There's a reef quest, which is this underwater world where you play with these sea creatures, basic chess moves, and then there's a jungle and then a forest that you can play with as well. And it has the names engraved in the board, and I'd say the visual language it's not Backyard Designers Club level. It's far more basic than that. But it's impressive what you can do with Opus 5 overnight. Like it's on its own. Like it
Ship
got
and
very
iterate,
far.
Tom. Unless I want to be one of the chess pieces.
Oh yeah. Maybe we can work to that.
Chess ass designers. That sounds awesome. You need to put that on the internet for me and for everyone listening.
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll throw it up on.
Of course, after your son has road tested it a little bit.
How about you, Jonny? Have you done any AI building experiments recently?
No, I in fact have barely opened my laptop over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So much so that I opened up my laptop today and had to relog into Claude, which is the first time I've had to do that in a long time. So, I'm truly blowing dust off my building skills at the moment. That said, Ooda, which I've talked about on the pod before, still pretty excited about it. And Y Combinator, big US accelerator, put out their call for startups last week. And one of the sort of categories that they mentioned pretty much described Ooda conceptually. So I don't know how much validation that really is, but excited to keep pushing on it and seeing what it can do. Ooda, by the way, if you haven't listened to previous episodes, is a way to host internal web widgets, sites, apps, prototypes, whatever it is you want to inside your company without leaking them out. And you can do all that through an agent. It needs users, so Ooda.run if you want to sign up. Promote my stuff. But yes, basically, and in fact, I don't anticipate writing a lot of code for the next 2 or 3 weeks either, other than in our workshop next week. Hoping to, I may not write any, but I'll be involved in coding projects, which I'm really excited about. So I can't wait to see the next batch of design tools that get created as we guide people through this process. There's some pretty cool design tools out there at the moment that I was playing with one today, which I was like, oh, people are building awesome stuff. So hopefully see some of that next week.
Super cool. Can't wait.
And yes, one final plug for it. As Tom mentioned, we'd love for you to join nearfuture.work/build. And if you want to bring your team, we can offer a discount. So find us on our socials or email us or something like that, and we'll hook you up. And what else have we got coming up? Do we need to shout out anything?
I don't think I'm running, mostly working a free evening AI and design event on Wednesday evening, very close to this workshop that we're running on Thursday morning, but they are actually two separate things. Yeah. But the one on Wednesday is going to be super fun. We have Christine Rode from the browser company coming in to talk about how she has made the daily summary experience in the browser look good and not look AI generated slop. So maybe that comes full circle to the start of our episode. I was super impressed with the work. She shared it I shared it over her shoulder a few months ago, and loved the story that she had around it as well, of being on holiday and then coming back and then seeing the progress without design and bringing design in, and just how much impact she was able to have. So very good work. Excited to see that on Wednesday. But Thursday is the thing we're all gearing up for. That is the design tools grand building experience, and I'm excited for it. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get some people to agree to share some of their tools online, and we can do a follow-up episode where we talk through some of them.
And then we're doing a live one of those in Brighton in September.
Absolutely.
And we have another couple of things going on that probably can't talk about quite yet, but listen out for them. And lots more interesting guests on the pod coming up, so do stick around. And once again, if you have any feedback, if you want more of us or less of us or different guests, then please do tell us and we will adjust accordingly. And with that, I think we should wrap. Thanks, Tom.
Jonny, thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.